Welcome, dear listeners, to the WIP show brought to you by Kimaya Creatives, where we dive deep into the world of writing and creativity. I am Namrata, your host and the founder of Kimaya Creatives. WIP, you might ask. Well, it stands for Writing in Progress, and that's exactly what we are all about here. Each week, we bring you inspiring conversations with talented writers, delving into their journeys, their challenges, and the stories behind their stories. From seasoned authors to aspiring wordsmiths, we explore the nooks and crannies of the writing process. Whether it's overcoming writer's block, finding inspiration in the unlikeliest of places, or simply navigating the wild, wonderful world of words, we are here for it all. So grab your favorite writing mug, settle into your coziest writing nook, and join us as we celebrate the beauty and the chaos of the writing life. Our guest today is debut author Krishna Kumar. Krishna Kumar is a software engineer based in the beautiful city of Pondicherry in India. An avid reader since childhood, he owns a personal collection of nearly 1,000 books. Interested in writing fiction, he has done some stints penning down short stories for competitions in both Tamil and English. Pursuing his love for horror fiction, taking inspiration from the writings of Stephen King and Joe Hill, The Ferryman is his first full-fledged novel. Welcome to the podcast, Krishna. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Starting with the podcast, our first question is, the premise of The Ferryman is so unique and chilling. What inspired the idea of a haunted bed and dreams that seem to spill into reality?
So the inspiration is actually the plot itself. It came to me as a dream.
Wow.
I myself went into a nightmare in the similar manner. So
Oh
it was
gosh.
during the COVID lockdown. So we were all locked down. We were all confined to our spaces, and writing has been something I wanted to do for a long period now. I have attempted some short fictions and other things, but whenever I try to go for a long fiction, I have never actually managed to complete it. So, but lockdown means we had a lot of time after our work. We had so much of time at our hands, and I was trying to see, okay, let's brainstorm, let's see if we can try to do something in long format fiction. And as I was doing this, 3 months into the lockdown, there was this one night I had a nightmare about this bed, and I actually woke up from this nightmare. And after that, I calmed myself down and I had some water and I was back to bed, but I couldn't catch sleep immediately. And during this time, I was thinking about this nightmare, and surprisingly, I remembered it very well. I remember the concept of the bed and the nightmare coming out into the reality. So I thought this would be a good idea to start with. And as I was lying down on the bed trying to see how I can incorporate this core idea into something as a fiction, something like a fiction. And there was this one episode of my life which I thought would be a good thing for a start. So the next morning, I just woke up and I thought, okay, let's pin it down. And I sat in front of my computer and I tried to start with the first couple of chapters, incorporating both of this together, and that's what grew into Ferryman later on.
Wow. I must tell you, I had to read your book during the day. Okay. I hate these nightmares. So I avoided reading it during the evening or the nighttime. Though usually I prefer reading at the nighttime, but your book was definitely something I didn't want that. So, as you mentioned that you tried to mix your experiences and it was a nightmare that came to you. So, is Aditya based on you? Like, is do you see a part of him in you or you in him? Because his journey in the book is so intense and terrifying. So, how did you develop this character?
Kind of Aditya is kind of based on me because the experience that I had was apart from the nightmare is the first few chapters that actually happened in my life. So that happened in 2019. So I was Aditya basically. So I was the one who witnessed an issue going on in the supermarket, and we ended up in the police station, and It was quite frustrating at that point to see because nothing worked on our favor. There was even a CCTV footage, but it was quite difficult to actually convince everyone that there was nothing wrong with us, me and my brother-in-law at that point. So, so this is what there was a lot of frustration for me at that point about the people who had caused the issue, and they were
Hmm.
not willing to let it go, and they kept on following it. And I was very surprised because there was a CCTV footage, there was everything that showed we had nothing to do with it, and yet things were not working on our favor mostly. So we had to get some help, and all a lot of things happened to come out of this situation. But the frustration was there to see that we did nothing, and yet we had to go through all this. The frustration was there, the anger was there against the other party and others. So next year was COVID, and this is when I had the dream, the nightmare, and I thought, what can be the start for this? So I thought this event could be a good start. So what if I had got this bed? What if I had got this bed at that point? What might have been the things I would have done? And this was a what if I wanted to answer. And thinking about it, I don't think it's just me, but every one of us, we would have our own frustrations because at one point we would have faced injustice, we would have faced things that didn't work for us, a lot of things. So it's not an ideal world where everything happens positive for you, but you build up these frustrations, but then we hide it. We just try to not show it off.
Yeah.
We have a veil in front of us. We play good human for the society situation here. So I just want to answer this what if where okay, what if I give you the opportunity to let it all out? What if I had this opportunity at that point in my life to let it all out? What would I have done? And it just grew from there. I started putting in a few other characters like Advika, who was not even there in the original, but I started putting Advika here, and she became a vital role. And yeah, so everything grew up from that point. So this is background story of Ferryman.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, it's observed that horror fiction often taps into our deepest fears. What are some of the fears you explored through this story? And were any of them personal?
One thing would be to being trapped in the nightmare and not letting yourself out. That could be one thing. But the main thing was, what if we had given into our own frustrations? What if we let them go? What if these things go out? That itself is scary because until we get the opportunity, we would not know how we would react, how what you would do. These are the opportunities we never get. But if we get and if we try to face them, that point itself is scary. We would realize a lot of things about us, thinking, okay, so this was thing. These were the things that we kept inside so long, so far, so deep, and now since we have the opportunity, and these are being exposed. And yeah, that would be the two things I would say about this question. So personally, for me, being stuck in a nightmare, and also about confronting myself on what this could happen, how things could change if we have some similar scenarios in our real life.
Wow. That I agree with that fear because, especially looking at how things are online, especially when even the smallest of things trigger and it leads to so much of reactions and so many actions and reactions that one is forced to think that, what all are we keeping bottled up inside? It must be coming out after so long that even the smallest of things is now triggering it. Even if it's online, a complete random stranger telling us something and it's triggering us. So yes, I relate to what you're saying. This is a fear that I can relate to.
That is a very good point because being online is an opportunity.
Yeah.
You don't get to show yourself. That gives them the power to showcase all those hatred, all those comments, all those debates, everything. They just don't care. These are things they would not do in real life, personally, to their family or in front of a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Just because they have the opportunity here in online, they showcase. And I would say this is just an extended, Ferryman is just an extended version of what you just described. You get to hide behind the veil, and at the same time, you have the power to do a lot of things. And what would you do? So this is a really good example that you get.
Okay. Wow. So coming to our next question, the Ferryman draws comparisons to the styles of Stephen King and Joe Hill. What is it about their work that inspires you, and how do you make the genre your own?
So coming to Stephen King, and because I even mentioned them in the book, the back cover, So one thing that really inspires me about these two people, they are father and son. Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King, and if you see their stories, if you see their novels, um, most likely most of those books do not have meticulous research. They do not showcase a lot of facts. They do not take a scientific concept or some history, and then they just don't give factual things into the they those stories contain a very localized setting where they just pour their heart into it. It's like your neighbor or your own town or your own village. This is where the story usually takes place. What Stephen King and even Joe Hill does is that they have one core idea. They say, okay, what if it happens in this way? What if there is a dome which resulted in Under the Dome? And similarly, what if there is a spaceship buried under which resulted in Tommy Knockers? Or what if a dog went bad, which resulted in Cujo? So there are a lot of what ifs, and they happen in a very simple scenario with just few people and within a own scenario. Stephen King, most of his books takes place in his own state. He doesn't go out of this. It's like if I write 50 books based on Pondicherry, that's how he writes it. You see, this is what I wanted to do because most of the fictions I went through, especially by Indian authors, uh, they were borrowing strongly from mythology, folklore, and existing things. But I wanted to do something different. It's like there is a fresh idea, and what happens if this happens in your next door? You don't even know about it. You know about it when everything has come out. So this is what I wanted to do. Same as there is no research, there is no lot of factual data because if you take for instance Dan Brown or Michael Crichton or Matthew Reilly, their books are loaded with lot of facts, pages and pages of data, showcasing, helping them to drive the story.
Yeah.
But this is not the case with Stephen King or Joel. They totally rely on their imagination and their storytelling. There will be a little bit of things to take their actual data from, but other than that, you don't see it much. So this is something similar I wanted to try in Ferryman. Um, and when I had the idea, I thought this could work really well in the same way I expected. I do not have to go through and research about a lot of things. All I wanted to do, I have done some research. Like I want to, the very basic thing I researched was parts of the bed. I didn't know what the parts of the bed were called, so I had to start from there. So simple researches like this, and yet I ended up with quite a good book. At least I believe this is quite a good book in the same manner as those two authors I love very much.
That actually makes me want to question the skip the next question and ask you another one instead of that. So, were there any scenes that actually gave you the chills after
Sorry.
all the research? Were there any scenes in the book which gave you the chills? Did any of them scare you while writing, or it left
Um,
you an impact which gave a nightmare
so
or something?
so I wouldn't say scared, but I was shocked at what I was able to achieve or arrive at because the book contains a lot of horror, thrilling elements, and eerie atmosphere. And more than that, it also has some gore contents at places. And these were not in my mind when I first started it. I
Okay.
wanted to keep it in a very different way. But then, as it went on, it just grew into such a thing. And when completed those chapters, I was like, okay, maybe I'm taking it far. Maybe this is something that would shock people. I was shocked at myself that I could create so much into this, especially the end of the first part. Um, there's a scene between Atwika and Amar where she goes to visit him, and it spans around some 30, 40 pages, I guess. This I wrote it within a single night. I started around 9 or 9:30. I ended up. I remember specifically because I don't write more than 2 3 hours. But that particular day, I remember going very long into the night. And by the time I was finished and I read it back, I was very shocked at the content I had put into the page. I was so surprised at myself. But in the end, once the book was completed, once I read through it, I personally feel that this content, despite the shocking nature of this, I personally felt it is relevant for the story. Especially for what happens next. But that's the thing. Was scared at myself of how much I could put into this.
Yeah, I agree. It can actually be very shocking at times. So, you've written short stories before this. How was the transition from short story, short fiction to a full-fledged novel? Were there any challenges or surprises that you encountered?
I stopped being lazy, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, I did. Even from the beginning, even during my engineering days, I had wanted to always write a novel, but
Okay.
I had some explored certain ideas at that point. But I think I was not ready because I was not able to go after few chapters or few pages. It always stopped there. And either the laziness or crept into me or my work or family situation, whatever I could call, but I never went back it. And 3 months later, I forgot the whole thing. I saw a lot of such unfinished manuscripts with just 10 pages, 20 pages, 50 pages staying on. And the short story itself, I 3 years after my first initial attempts, I came across a competition in online competition where they wanted to submit some short stories, and I had a couple of ideas that I thought would make very well, and I managed to finish. Those were the first things I were able to complete, and they gave me a bit of confidence, and I did submitted them. And later on, bargaining on this confidence, I started again, failed again, until I reached COVID with a lot of time in my hand, and the idea for Ferryman occurred to me. But the transition itself, I would say, being consistent was something I discovered. Go
Yeah.
back, that's the main thing, to actually go back. All the time I have skipped my previous manuscripts. I didn't go back to them. It was a week, then it weekend to months, and months turned to year, but I just never went back to them. But with Ferryman, each day I went back to it. Even if I don't write, I just go back and I just simply skim through what I had written the previous day. So that consistency helped, I think, is a big factor for me here, and it helped me finish the book itself.
You sharing this experience actually reminds me of something what an author had shared that it looks like the writer chooses a story, like we decide which one to work on, but there are actually times when the story chooses us. So, and because it's so clear in our mind that you just have to sit and write, you don't have to think. So that's how you are describing it. That it's so clear, it just flows. So it's this story
Exactly.
chose you instead of you choosing this story, and that explains why you were able to complete this manuscript and write for so long, undisturbed into the night and with so much. Because Krishna, we have interacted, and I know that that some portions of the gore which you just described, I can relate that perhaps that's not your nature. But the way you tried to achieve it, that also shows that the story wanted to you to do it like that. So it reminds me of those words here.
Lot of friends my friends who have actually read the book was like, we didn't expect such shocking content from you. They liked the book. They were talking about the pace. They were talking about how the atmosphere was set, about the character Adithya. A lot of things they were talking about. And one main point was that we never expected your first book to be such shocking content with so much horror and so much good. It kind of gives us a couple of sleepless nights. That was one of the comments I frequently hear because, like you said, we have talked with him and my friends. They've seen me, and they never expect my first delivery to be a horror,
Right.
and they were quite surprised.
I agree with that actually. So, with nearly 1,000 books in your personal collection, what are some of your favorite reads, and have any of them directly influenced your writing style? Though I know you've spoken very much about Stephen King and Joe Hill, so is that what exactly impacted your writing style and they influenced you?
So, favorite is a very difficult question to answer, you know. It's with any reader, you just cannot find your exact favorite. Some things
Yeah.
you always fight with. But no, Stephen King and Joe Hill, I do enjoy their books, but I had outgrown them half a decade back. I just go back to them these days. There is a new book. For instance, Joe Hill has not written any book in the last 10 years. So his new novel is coming up this year in September. So he was sticking with short stories and comic books. But I do go back to them often for a change. But other than that, these days I go into some art literature specifically. So to answer about my personal books, personal favorites, there is one book called Card in Tamil. That's from an author called Jai Mohan, and this is my personal favorite. And not because of the plot, not because of the pace or anything. It's just the writing itself. Uh, the writing in this book, it gives you an experience. I've never seen any other book that gives me an experience. I do finish the book, but the entire reading was an experience when I read this particular book. And I do have certain other favorites. I can go by language, you know. In Tamil, Kadu, if you take Malayalam, I would like Chemmin by Tagari Sivasankaran Pillai. And English, I love Salman Rushdie's work. I love um, Amitav Ghosh. I have a wide range of favorites.
Wow, that's
But
interesting.
talking about my own writing, I chose I chose horror because the idea was horror. The subject was a supernatural subject about the bed that came to me. And when it comes to horror and supernatural elements, my favorite go-to is Stephen King and Joe Hill. And I just went with that.
Right. So, do we see you experimenting with genres? Do you wish to try something beyond horror in your next book, or do we see you writing only horror?
I really do because I don't want to stick with horror alone. I don't know if I would do once again a horror without a good idea, but I don't really want to be stuck with like Stephen King or Joe Hill because they now chunk out only horror. Even if they go away from the horror, it's like something pulls them back. You know, the next book they come back to it. They do deviate from it, but they come back to. I just don't want to do this. If I'm going to publish one more thing, the idea has to drive me. Like you said, the idea for Ferryman was exciting enough for me to sit through 6, 7, 8 months to finish it, and I want the idea to be the same, to do the same with the next one. So the idea has to drive me, and if the idea is drama, I would go for it. If it's science fiction, I would go for it. Whatever it works.
That's beautiful. The concept of dark desires and the human mind's monstrosity is central to the Ferryman. So, what kind of message or reflection did you hope readers would take away from this theme?
I guess they would look back at themselves because I personally know and I believe that each one of us, like I already answered, each one of us do have certain things in our life that we are frustrated about. It shouldn't have happened to us, but then life happens to all of us, and it doesn't work in our favor, and we are frustrated about it. But then what if we give in to these kind of desires? The book kind of talks about it. So I would say the book should be used as an example to not give in to such desires. You do have a moral to follow because that's the thing. Yeah, you don't get go and kill because your frustrations and
Yeah.
anger asks you to do so. So this book should be an example. This book is something that should be seen because a couple of readers who have read the book, who talked about to me on this subject, they were like, they actually said they want to do similar. If only they can get the opportunity like this, they would do something similar. And I was saying, okay, so this book is an example that you shouldn't be doing those things. two or three readers actually told me that they need such a bed, they need such a thing so that they can get back at a few other people. And I was like, no, 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 no. If anything, this book teaches you, it teaches you to not to pursue those things, to think about it before pursuing those things. Because when you give in, the results is what is described in the book. You don't want to become like like Adithya, so it should be the other way around. That's what I told them. So this is what I would expect the readers to take away from it, to not give in into these things.
That's a powerful message, I must say. So finally, as a debut novelist, what advice would you give to aspiring horror writers who are trying to find their voice in this genre?
Advice, one thing is consistency, because that's one thing I discovered myself. Being consistent helped me to complete this book, and also the idea was exciting enough for me to come back. But it doesn't mean I wrote every day. There have been days or lines, but rather end up going back, reading the things I've already written, trying to edit them. But you need to go back. And that's the consistency writing expects out of you. You just go back to it, even though if you don't write it, even though if you don't manage to finish one line for the next 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. You go back, sit, write, or read at least what you have written, try to edit the existing chapters. Whatever it is, try going back to it again and again until you put the end at the
So, Krishna, time for some fun rapid fire questions.
end
So, haunted house or haunted bed?
on the bed.
Night owl or early?
Night owl.
Favorite horror movie of all time?
Uh, it's a Korean movie called The Wailing. It's one of my favorites. And on a horror series, I would say Midnight Mass by Mike Flanagan.
Wow, okay. One book you wish you had written?
Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton.
Okay, that's an interesting choice. I was expecting Stephen King titles here. So if you could have dinner with any fictional character, who would it be?
Batman. No
Okay.
questions. Batman. Always, always Batman.
That's some answer there. So spontaneous writing or well-planned plotting?
I'm going towards well-planned plotting because Ferryman was spontaneous. I just had a core idea in the beginning, and then I had to develop the rest. I went on with it as I thought of it. But
Mhm.
I think for the next book or upcoming projects, I would actually try to be plotting it.
Okay. What's scarier, a nightmare you can't wake up from or a ghost you can't see?
A nightmare that I can't wake up.
Okay. And that brings us to the end
The
of this
book talks
episode.
about the same thing.
Yeah, of course. It actually brings us to the beginning of what we discussed and how this idea came from. Are there any closing words that you would like to share with your readers? I will be sharing links to your book and all your social media handles with this video when it goes live with this podcast episode. Any message that you would like to give to them?
Um, I don't have to have a specific message, but I would say try giving this book a chance because more than the writing, because it's my debut book, and more than the writing or the publishing part, the more difficulty is trying to make this book reach the readers, and this is where I contacted with you on Kimaya, and so reaching the readers is where the difficulty arises, and I think this book will be a good set for you if you are into horror, thriller, and supernatural genres. So what I would say is to give this book a chance, see if it works for you, and leave out some good comments if you like it.
Definitely. Do pick this book up and do leave a review because authors thrive on those reviews, readers. Thank you so much, Krishna, for such an engaging conversation. It was fun knowing the inspiration behind the book.